Hey guys, it's Danny. Welcome to the first episode of this new series, which I don't even know how to title just yet, in which I answer the questions you guys leave in super thanks. First of all, thank you so much for all of you who left me a super thanks. But you know what? You can take advantage and ask something or propose a subject for a video, because I do want to make it a sort of a series just to, show my appreciation a little more. And well, today we're going to tackle one subject, and this is the sticky sap or droplets that sometimes orchids produce. What is it? Why do they produce this? What do we need to do about it? And this is a subject I first tackled in 2015. There is a video about it, but it's old. My equipment got better, I learned more, so we're just gonna redo the subject altogether. And good timing, because Maya did ask me if this so-called happy sap can harm leaves of an orchid in any way if not removed. So to answer to that question really fast, generally no. This sap is not really dangerous. What it is just sugars, concentrated sugar water pretty much. And by itself it cannot really damage leaves, but it can attract stuff actually, which can damage leaves. Anyway, so I think it's a good idea to just start with the beginning in order to understand why orchids produce it. So before we do, don't forget to give this video a like if you end up enjoying it. Subscribe, it is free and I post multiple times a week. But if you're feeling a little extra, you can further support the channel by checking out the merch using the affiliate links in the description, becoming a member, or using the super thanks option down below my videos. Right. Let me just see the little list that I made here with stuff I want to say. First off, what is this sap? In PS, you will find it described as quote-unquote happy sap, honeydew, things of the sorts. I will try to stay away from calling it happy sap like I did in the past, because it's not really all that happy, it doesn't really mean the plant is happy either, and it can create some confusion. I'm just gonna call it orchid sap because that's exactly what it is. It is a highly sugar concentrated liquid that exudes through the pores of an orchid. It happens due to the pressure with which the orchid transports the sap, and this is actually the food. There are two types of sap with any plant. The sugary one is called the elaborated sap. I think in English it's the same. I'll be sure to link you an article down below if you want to further learn about it. It is what orchids consume in order to grow. Sugars equals energy. And well, because this sap is pushed through the structures of a plant with a certain pressure, sometimes it can exude on the outside. And the places where you will most likely find it are the places that are very prone to having more pores or stomatas, or having a very thin cuticle. The places more prone to see it are the undersides of the leaves, because this is where the stomatas are. Even though the upper side can have some pores as well, it is usually protected by that thick cuticle. The undersides of the leaves do not have such a thick cuticle. The density of pores is greater on the underside, so the sap encounters the least resistance there, so that's where it's gonna come out from. Also, you can find it on flower spikes, on buds, on things like sheaths, on cattleyas. For every orchid it can be slightly different. Wherever the cuticle is thinnest, that is where the sap is more likely to exude from. Also, these are the structures that are actively growing. Flower spikes and buds are more prone to produce that sap as they grow and open their buds. Also, in the case of cattleyas, those sheaths, both the flower sheaths and also that thin sheath that covers the new growth, as the new growth grows, that's a tongue twister, but as they grow, they will push more and more sugary water, because that's where the biggest concentration of energy needs to go. And when I say energy in my videos, typically I mean this sugary water that we see on the outside. Bottom line, it is not an intentional product. At least I do not find any evidence to support that the orchid purposely does this. We'll talk about misconceptions at the end. What it is, it's a byproduct of other functions, such as transporting sap through the structures of the orchid. Yes, the downside is some of it will go out. Is it detrimental for the orchid in the wild? No, it is not. It is a natural phenomenon, and it should not be confused with guttation, which is something else. Guttation is water exuding from the edges, usually, of the leaves. You will not find droplets of water everywhere on plants generally, but on the edges of the leaves. And that water is not sugary. It can have other nutrients, but it's not sugar. So this is totally something else. So let's address the question at hand. Is it harmful? Do we need to do anything about it? And well, sometimes we have to. And before I delve into the subject, I do want to stress the fact that our living rooms or our houses in general cannot compare to the outside world. In their natural habitat, orchids can take care of themselves or rely on nature to take care of. In our homes, there are many things that don't happen, and we kind of need to play the Mother Nature role. In the case of sap, in nature, if it is excessive, it can easily be solved through rain. This is sugar. It dissolves so fast in water. In a matter of 2 seconds, if you wash a little bit a leaf, you can get rid of all of those sticky sap. You don't have to wash it with detergents or anything. So it is very likely that in nature, it doesn't really accumulate and become detrimental due to the regular rains. Even if they're not very frequent, from time to time, they do happen. Whilst in cultivation, showering without any regards for the possibility of rotting new growths is not a good idea. So typically we don't shower orchids all that much. And this sap, yes, it can accumulate a little bit. So what are the downsides? Well, first and foremost, it is annoying as heck. Whenever I do something with my orchids, whenever I water or I want to arrange something on the shelf, I get the sticky water on my hands. I don't even notice it. I go about my day and I realize I'm sticky, and not only my arms, but also my clothes are sticky. And because they're sticky, I sometimes find all sorts of lint and dust stuck to me because of that sticky, sugary thing. So it's very inconvenient for us humans. At the end of the day, it's not the orchid's fault, right? But it is inconvenient. Inconvenience is the most frequent quote-unquote side effect, and it's not harming the orchid in any way. There are other worse stuff though. If it accumulates too much on the buds, and I can show you better on this side, the bud itself is covered by a little sheath, like in the case of oncidiums or some oncidiums. In the case of the Silogene usitana, the bud which is forming has a little sheath. Well, this sheath exudes a lot of sap. Sometimes it can get so excessive that the sheath doesn't want to fall off, and it's supposed to fall off. So the bud gets stuck in this sheath and gets a little bit distorted. It doesn't happen all that often with things such as Phalaenopsis, which have a tiny little sheath that covers a little bit of the bud petiole, I think. But in other species or in other varieties, it can pose a little bit of an issue, which in the end is more cosmetical than anything else, but it's also still annoying. In some instances, if it's on the underside, it can actually impair respiration. The only orchids that I personally have issues with excessive sap are catasetums. And let me get one. Maybe I can show you the side effect on them. Okay, so here I have a catasetum which sadly has some bug issues as well, or it had. So this grazing damage is not caused by the happy sap, but do you see these? I think you will see them better on the underside. These spots, they are circular spots. Well, that is a spot where this sap became sugar. It kind of dried out and it became a blob of sugar stuck to the underside. I generally like to remove the sap from catasetums because it gets excessive. I think what happened here was the leaf itself got a little suffocated by that blob of sugar which got stuck there. It clogged the stomatas, and I think it was so excessive that respiration itself of the leaf was so impaired that some of the tissues started to become a little necrotic, if you will. That is just my suspicion. I always see this with catasetums, and the only difference is that catasetums generally produce a whole lot of sap. So I do need to take a wet piece of cotton and just remove it. And yes, typically I don't like to rub the undersides because again, I can clog the stomatas with dust or lint or whatever. But you know, I don't think I can do worse than this actually, so I have nothing else to lose. I like to remove the sap. So in some extreme cases, yeah, I think it can damage a little bit the leaf. In the vast majority of other cases, it actually doesn't. So that's okay. To answer to my last questions, you don't generally need to worry about the sap unless it is highly excessive. Another bad thing that this sap can do is attract insects. And I'm tempted to go into the misconceptions now, but I will not. So because it's sugary, it attracts ants. That's not always a good thing. I think it depends on the region and on the type of ant. There are some ants which like to foster, if you will, mealybugs. They kind of farm them. So mealybugs are actually not attracted by the sap, they like to graze. And it just so happens that their poop is sweet and sticky. Ants are very, very attracted to that. So initially you can have an ant infestation that consumes the sap, and when they're done with the sap, if they find a mealybug, they can protect it because the mealybug gives them even more sap. It only happened to me once. Generally, I don't have issues, but a few years ago, I think a couple of years ago, I had this happen. I could not believe it. I had a lot of ants kind of moving around and protecting the mealybugs. It was weird. So that's another bad thing that happy sap can produce or lead to in a home environment. It's not always gonna happen, but it could. Generally though, other than that, not much. It's really not harmful. It is also non-toxic to my knowledge, but would I encourage you to taste it or eat it? No, absolutely not. I do not encourage anybody to play around with these things. Do so at your own risk. Wash it away with a damp cloth if you really dislike it, if it's really annoying for you or if it worries you. Right, my favorite section, misconception number 1. It is actually purposeful and it is used by the plant to attract pollinators. Well, first and foremost, pollinators should not be attracted to the leaves where the sap generally is, right? So that's already very conflicting. Second, pollinators are not attracted by the sap. The only things attracted are ants. And ants are way too tiny to pollinate anything. Most orchids we like to grow want to attract moths and butterflies and bees. These types of insects usually prefer fragrant flowers, colorful flowers, big flowers. It's kind of like what we like. There are orchids which are pollinated by ants, but they have very, very, very tiny flowers. Generally, we don't grow them because they're not too showy for us. And even though, yes, you might see a bee or something trying to eat a little bit the sap, I've had my orchids outside. I have never seen bees go for the happy sap. They went for the flower. Butterflies as well, they go for the flower. There are stuff that indicate to them that the flower is a tavern, I guess. Everything about a flower is designed to attract pollinators, certain types of pollinators. And if something as complex as this is needed to attract the pollinator, something as dull as sugar sap positioned in the wrong place makes no sense. So as far as I'm concerned, I do not see any scientific evidence to support the fact that the sap is purposeful in pollination. I can see how it could be purposeful if the orchid creates symbiosis with the ants, and there are some orchids which do that. Generally, what are they called? Gongoras, there we go. The gongoras can do that. So in that case, I can see a little bit of a relation there. But there are other benefits that gongoras can offer. Also, a type of cattleya offers some benefits for ants as well, and sap is not necessarily one of them. So in my mind, sap doesn't necessarily have such a purposeful role, and certainly it does not attract butterflies. It can attract ants, that's for sure, but ants are not pollinators for these plants. Another misconception is that the appearance of of sap means that the orchid is happy, hence why some people call it happy sap. Well, one of the most common instances of excessive sap is the presence of pests grazing on the leaf. The more breakage in the cuticle, the more places for the sap to easily go out. So typically when I have a lot of sap, particularly on the flower spike, like tiny little dots next to each other covering the flower spike, I would investigate for thrips or mites, because they're tiny enough to create these dots. So excessive sap is definitely not happy. Yes, sap exudes when it circulates through the plant. And that's a good thing if it circulates, but it's also normal. It's supposed to do that. And yes, it can mean that the orchid is getting hydrated in the case that you had a rootless orchid. Seeing that sap exuding can tell you that the orchid is absorbing water. So that's great. But generally speaking, the happy sap is not happy at all. It can lead to all sorts of headaches, and even a sick orchid can produce sap. And another misconception that I like to address is that you can eat it and it's good for you. No, it's sugar. You want to eat sugar? I suggest you go to the store and buy some processed sugar, because you know it does not have fertilizer residue on it. It does not have potential other chemicals, fungicides, insecticides, whatever nurseries put on these orchids, residue on it. you don't want to lick that. Now, if you feel you need some sugar, just buy some sugar. Don't lick your orchid, because you don't know. Okay, maybe you had it for a while, you had it outside. It's good, it doesn't have fungicides. What if it has bird poop? What if it has mealybug poop? No, just don't lick your orchids, is my opinion. You can do whatever you want, but I would not eat it because it's not nutritious. It is sugar. That's what it is. So I think that is about it on the honeydew, happy sap, orchid sap. Now you know more about it, hopefully, and I hope you've enjoyed today's video. And again, another reminder, if you want to use the super thanks option, take advantage, ask me something, tell me that you'd like to see this type of video. What I would like to do is to make it like either a monthly series, either a series where I can combine multiple subjects. This happened to be a tutorial that I really wanted to redo for quite a few years now. So thank you so much, Maya, for the support and for suggesting or asking about happy sap, plant sap, orchid sap. So that's it. I hope you all have a great day. Feel free to check out my second channel. It's linked down below. But most importantly, subscribe to this channel because this is where I post the good stuff. With that said, I'll see you next time. Bye.